You're listening to the Dad Whisperer Podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the place where you, as a dad, will gain more tools for your fathering toolbox, and where moms and daughters are also invited to listen into the conversation. Now, here is your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.
Hello and welcome back to the Dad Whisperer Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, and I welcome you here, Dad, especially if you're ready to add more tools to your fathering toolbox. And today, we're going to go deep. We're going to dive deep. We're going to talk about some heavy issues, but I've really had this on my heart for a long time, and I want to come alongside you as a coach, as an ally, as a friend, as someone who wants to help guide you to more self-reflection and understanding, because I believe today's conversation will be powerful and insightful and will help you understand yourself even better. And so before we get started, you know the grid I use every week, which is simply on your mark, get set, go. So Dad, I want you to picture yourself standing side by side with other dads getting ready to run your fathering race this week. And where am I? On the sidelines, of course. I'm cheering you on as a coach and saying on your mark, get set, go. On your mark, always the topic or the theme, get set, filling that in with stories and stats, and go is always your practical action step so that you can put your love for your daughters, for your sons, for the people in your life, and even yourself into action this week. Now, honestly, in 8.5 years of doing this, I have never said, and yourself. But because today is about helping you, I'm coming alongside you to help you understand yourself better. I almost envision you and I maybe even sitting down on the track, on that race. You know, you're running that race, you're on that racetrack, and we're just taking a breath. We're sitting down, we're catching our breath, we're having some water, we're resting muscles because you've been running hard. And I want us to have a conversation today about a topic that I don't think men unpack nearly enough. And I can attest to almost 30 years as a clinician, mental health, in the trenches with folks, that more women than men come into my office, or do I meet with them on telehealth around the country? More women than men. And yet I know how many men are hurting, because when I speak at men's conferences, or you email, me, or send me, a message, or you call, or whatever it is, or I run into you here or there, I hear over and over that oftentimes you're struggling, but no one knows that you are. I think of how often in the ABBA project, once men felt safe and they had other men sitting with them, the tears would pour. I said, I never knew men cried so much and talked so much. And what the guys in the ABBA project would often say is, well, because we're not competing with women, to be honest with you. So today, Dad, you don't have to compete with anyone. We're just going to sit down. We're going to have a conversation here along the track, if you will, on the sidelines, where we're just catching our breath. And I want us to talk about a really important topic. And here it is, on your mark, when you're a depressed dad. So what do you do when you're a dad that wants to be the best dad you can be? You know how much I'm talking about that here on the podcast. And yet you're saying, I can't do it because of what's going on inside of me. I'm depressed. And maybe you don't even want to admit that you are. So we're going to unpack that today with definitions, with stats, with stories. And by the end of this conversation, my hope is that it will move the needle a little bit in you understanding what's going on inside of you, and maybe have a little bit of an action plan about what to do about it. How's that sound? Okay, well, get set. Here's what I want to say first of all, is most of us will feel depressed at some point in our lives, especially when things are too heavy or our capacity for coping in that season just doesn't seem to be enough to handle everything on our life plate. Sometimes I've had dads tell me I'm depressed because of the choices that my kids are making, or maybe it's the state of my marriage or my work life or my parents and what's going on in my family of origin, and on it goes. Could be your own health issues, but depression is something that all of us will feel, or I say most of us, at some point in our lives. So I want to say right there, that helps normalize it. There's not something wrong with you if you're depressed. If you look at the current stats in America, they will help you know you're not alone. In fact, I just found an article. I want to read you a little bit about this because it's pretty profound what we're reading right now. Here's something from the Center for Disease Control. We all know about the CDC. This article came out November 7th of 24. The title National Health Statistics Reports, and then this exact article is titled Symptoms of Anxiety and Depression Among Adults in the United States, 2019 and 2022. Here's what they say. Anxiety and depression. So I'm going to define terms here in a minute, but I just want to give you a broad stroke about these concepts before we even break down what they are, because I think you probably have a little bit of an idea already about anxiousness is where you kind of feel more amped up. Depression is where you kind of lose energy and you go down. So anxiety and depression are two of the most common mental health conditions experienced by adults in the United States. That's what this report says. In 2019, about 6% of adults say they had experienced moderate or severe symptoms of anxiety in the past 2 weeks. Now, I have no idea how their numbers are this low. 6%? My goodness. I could sit around with a bunch of clinicians and we would probably say over 50% easy. But I'm giving you what this report says because it has credibility, of course. You know, it's put on and funded by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You could look up this article if you want, but here's what they go on to say. And 7% say they'd experienced moderate or severe symptoms of depression in the past 2 weeks, which affects physical health issues, health-related quality of life, finances, performance at work or at school. So I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, is when there's depression, everything is affected, isn't it? They go on to say that previous studies have shown that symptoms of anxiety and depression increased over 2020 into 2021 during the beginning of the pandemic. So we all know, whether it's in your life, in your spouse or your ex-spouse's wife or your girlfriend's life or your kid's life, is depression has been on the increase since COVID set in, right? So on this side of the pandemic where we're all trying to catch our land legs, I think this is the time to be talking about this so that you as a dad can have more awareness as to whether you're in a depressed state. Because I think sometimes for men, it's easier to deny that what's actually going on is depression. You maybe are trying to push it down. You're trying to exercise more to just rise above it, which is great. I'm not saying that those coping strategies aren't effective. I know that diet has a lot to do sometimes with us feeling better. If you're drinking a lot of alcohol, it's called a sedative, hypnotic in some circles that I am taught by, and meaning it's going to sedate you. It's going to take you down. So if you're already depressed, you may want to numb things out with alcohol. Not a good idea, right? Not a good idea because of what it does to your whole system to have to recuperate on the other end of that. And then oftentimes you've now added injury, if you will, to insult. Like you already have a hard thing going on, and now your body is trying to recuperate from already being taken down into that relaxed state and what it does to your bloodstream, not, even counting what it's doing to your relationships and your mood overall. So just want to put that in there. Okay, so here's the question. How do you know if you're actually clinically depressed? So you notice in what I just read to you, they were talking about moderate or severe depression. So here's what I use a thing, we call it the Bible, if you will, in our mental health circles called the let me give you the long name, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM. We're currently in the version of 5, DSM-5. So we talk about this as major depressive disorder. Now, even if you don't fit that criteria, I just still want to break down some of what these specific items are so that you have some way of knowing how many of these you have. Now, what they say in the DSM is to meet the criteria here for major depressive disorder. It means that you experience at least 5 of these, 12 things I'm going to tell you about, 11, 12 things here. And then you can say, how many of these do I have? They're saying you need to have at least 5 for at least 2 weeks nearly every day. So even if you don't hit every point on this list, if you have many of these, you may not have that clinical diagnosis, but you still may be dealing with depression. So number 1, A sad or empty or hopeless mood, like I said, for 2 weeks or more. 2, loss of interest or pleasure in activities that you once enjoyed. Number 3, withdrawal or more isolation. 4, feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness. 5, changes in sleep habits. So it could be you're oversleeping or you can't sleep. 6, changes in appetite. So it could be that you're eating a lot more or eating a lot less. You're gaining a lot of weight or you're losing a lot of weight. But there's changes in your appetite. 7, increases in substance use, which I had talked about earlier, or self-injurious behavior. So what that means is that you may be more reckless in your spending, with sex, with addiction, with porn, things that are kind of maybe reckless or intense. And sometimes that could be your brain's desire for stimulus to try to get your neurotransmitters in your brain to fire at a more intense level because you can tell they're on the lethargic end of things, so to speak. I like to think of neurotransmitters as these little guys in our brain that are playing ball. And this neurotransmitter is sending the ball to the next guy, and then that guy is sending it to the next guy. But when there's depression, the visual I get is that this neurotransmitter has a ball and throws it, but doesn't have enough energy, so it falls. Then the second guy has to walk over, pick it up, walk back to his spot, and throw it to the next guy. Doesn't have enough energy. It falls halfway across the threshold. The other guy has to walk over, and everything takes a lot more energy. So that's my layman's way of trying to make that make more sense. So number 7 is that increase in substance use or things that are injuring yourself. 8, more fatigue, loss of energy. So that's what I was just talking about, kind of lethargy. 9, more irritability and restlessness. Number 10, more angry than usual. Now, here's the thing I want to underscore, especially for a lot of men, is that depression does not always look like crying. And again, I would put that, as the next one, number 11. It could be that you are more emotional in terms of crying. You never were a crier, and now you are more, in touch with tears, with crying than you've ever been in your life. And you may think, what is wrong with me? Or you're crying more at other stories as perhaps I see that as your body's way of wanting to release the sadness inside, the depression inside. But here's the thing for you to understand, especially as a guy, is that your depression may come out as anger. So I always say mad and sad are two sides of the same coin. So sometimes when you're more angry, that's actually a sign of depression. Sometimes catches people off guard to hear it that way, but it really is. And then the last one, 12, frequent thoughts of death or suicide attempts, so that you just feel like you don't want to keep living. Now, I know that we can all hit hopelessness at different times where we don't want to live, but when you start to have a plan or thoughts of how you would carry that out, you've got to tell someone. You can't hold that in. You weren't meant to carry this alone. So I wanted to just share all of that kind of clinically with you first, and also say that there's something online. You can get this even for free. It's called the Beck Depression Inventory, BECK. And in that, you can take it for free, like I said, and it has 21 items on it. And each one has about 4 descriptors under it. So the first one is sadness, where it'll say, I do not feel sad. I feel sad much of the time. I'm sad all of the time. And I'm so sad or unhappy that I can't stand it. So each item gives you kind of a little bit of a Likert scale where you can rate it and circle the number that fits. And then you total your score at the end. So 0 to 10 is mild depression, 11 to 20 is moderate depression, 21 to 30 is severe depression. But it may give you a mirror to kind of take what I told you today and evaluate yourself to see where are you at on a continuum. Because if we don't know what's going on, we don't know how to ever ask for help. We may just think, it's just work. It's just work. That's everybody's stressed. But I would say ask some people around you. Hey, give them this form and say, do you see me displaying or in, any of these specific things? Because on the Beck, the sections are, I'll give you all 21. Sadness, pessimism. You're dwelling on past failure, loss of pleasure, guilty feelings, punishment feelings, self-dislike, self-criticalness, and then one I've mentioned, suicidal thoughts or wishes, crying. That's, again, some of these are things I just listed. Agitation, loss of interest, indecisiveness, worthlessness, loss of energy, changes in sleeping patterns, irritability, changes in appetite, concentration difficulty, tiredness or fatigue, and loss of interest in sex. So that Beck Depression Inventory, I would really encourage you, if you're dealing with depression, Dad, take that, test or assessment and use it as a way to start not only understanding yourself more, but you could then use that as a bridge builder to talk with someone else about what's going on and say, here's what I just took, to kind of look at myself. And maybe you could ask them to take it on you. Like, how would you score me? So you're using that person that you trust as a bit of a mirror to say, I don't know, am I off base here according to how you've seen me and been in relationship with me? So does that help at all? I am hopeful that it does, because today I really do want to give you practical action steps so that you can understand yourself better and move through this without this being, kind of where you feel stuck for a long period of time, because hope is here. Now, here's a way that I explain depression oftentimes to my clients is I'll take a pillow and I'll say, my pillow is not depressed. Then I'll take my hand, push down on the top of it and say, now my pillow is depressed. It didn't just get depressed on its own, but something is weighing it down, pushing it down. There's a reason that my pillow is now depressed. So most of the time, depression is linked to some force. It could be the loss of something. It could be the intense pressure or new addition of something, but it's usually happening in relationship to a stressor or a variable, oftentimes outside of your control. Now, I also do want to mention that I know some of us can have more of a propensity to depression if we're more of a melancholy personality. Now, that is me. I can get angry, and I think oftentimes that's my default. But I grew up where I had a lot of sadness, a lot of Debbie Downer, if you will, kinds of feelings. I feel deep. And a lot of times when you're a deep feeler, it's God wired you that way. That's not something wrong with you. But if that more, kind of propensity to a melancholy view, more of seeing the pain in the world, and you feel that, you're more of an empath, you probably will struggle more with coming up and out of depressed feelings. And I wanted to just mention, I talked to my husband. You all know Dr. Ken Canfield. I mean, you've heard me talk about him here, founded the National Center for Fathering. He was just telling me that with one of his colleagues, Dr. Walter Shum at Kansas State University, he's now a professor emeritus, who has authored over 400 journal articles. Wow, right? So they did a research study together where they found that those who were more intuitive and negative tended to be more melancholy. And those folks had lower marital satisfaction and were more likely to be depressed overall. So, Ken is kind of highlighting that, yes, studies confirm if you're more wired in a melancholy way, you will be more apt to be depressed. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a kid's author named Shel Silverstein. Maybe you read some of his stories to your kids, or they're kind of funky and whimsical, quirky kind of poems that he draws funky article or pictures to go with them. But there was one that I read that I just thought, for those of you that maybe are given more to melancholy or depression, you will relate to this particular poem that he titled The Land of Happy. Have you been to the land of happy, where everyone's happy all day, where they joke and they sing of the happiest things and everyone's jolly and gay? There's no one unhappy in happy. There's laughter and smiles galore. I have been to the land of happy. What a bore. So I know it's silly, but I just thought I would read that to you today to just kind of say, if that is you and you can relate, you may say, I hate all things that are stupid like that, and I don't laugh at silly things. I think they're a waste of time. I just thought I would brighten the mood for a minute by reading you that silly, silly poem and say, you may be wired like that to go, I cannot stand when everyone is overly happy. That's okay. You just want to let them be them, and you be you, boo-boo. Okay, is depression a sign of emotional weakness? Absolutely not. Like I said, depression is caused by many factors. It could be your wiring already. We call it that you already might have a predisposition in your family of origin genetics towards depression. You know, those neurotransmitters aren't firing. Serotonin and dopamine are not your friends as much, and yet, we're going to talk at the end about some of you. It really may help to have a doctor look at you, have an exam, an assessment, and to see if perhaps an antidepressant would be helpful to get those neurotransmitters firing. We'll talk about that more at the end. But what I wanted to say too is that then external events come in, right? They may then be at the place where they're exceeding your internal coping skills. It can also be sometimes, like I say, for women, hormonal imbalances. We may use different wording for men, but that it's something going on in your system that is beyond your control. But the reality is that when someone has been really down for a long time and doesn't feel understood or supported, that is when it can be easy to go into hopelessness, helplessness, and then the slippery slope can be into suicide. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation, and I'll start by giving you more information about some of these realities. We'll be right back.
Are you a dad who has ever desired a deeper connection with your daughter, but haven't known how to go about it? Let's Talk Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters is the very resource you need. Dr. Michelle wrote it with you dads in mind. This book will support you with scripted questions, equip you to decode your daughter, and inspire you with stories of other dads and daughters. Don't wait any longer to be the hero you want to be and that your daughter needs you to be. So, to let the talking begin, head on over to drmichellewatson.com/books and order your copy today. This book will become a favorite in your fathering toolbox and will give you the answers you've been looking for. That's drmichellewatson.com/books. Now, back to the Dad Whisperer podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, and today we're talking about when a dad gets depressed. When you're a depressed dad, you may not know how to open up this conversation. Perhaps you'll play this podcast with someone and you can say, let's have a conversation. Here's what Dr. Michelle brought up today, and I would love us to have a discussion because I haven't known how to bring this up. Or maybe it's a friend, or maybe it's your daughter, and you're saying, hey, let's listen to this together and have a conversation. So the thing I was talking about right before the break is that oftentimes when depression hangs on for a long time, it can lead to suicidality, like feeling like I don't want to live anymore. And if that's where you're at, I strongly encourage you to tell one person, whether it's your spouse, a close friend, a mentor, a pastor, a counselor. You can call a suicide hotline, but we do not want you to take your life. And I'm saying I don't. And I say we, those around you that know you, that love you, that care about you. And there's way too many suicides happening since COVID. I don't know what all the variables are. I think there's different theories about what that could be tied to. But at the end of the day, no one is the same when you're not here. And I've heard it said that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But right now, it may feel like it's a forever problem and you can't see your way out or your way through. But that's where you need somebody else to come alongside you and to encourage you and to say, either I've been where you've been, or I'm going to walk with you till we're to the other side of this. There are always options. I promise you. And I've had a couple times in my life where I would say I was that low. I never had a suicide plan, but I didn't want to live anymore. And one of the keys, right, was not going through it alone. but suicide is the second leading cause of death for kids ages 10 to 19 in the U.S. We know that youth suicide has increased by 58% in the last decade. So I'm talking about kids here, not adults. But we also know suicide rates in adults. I mean, I honestly would say probably weekly I am hearing on social media, or we're hearing it somewhere, someone even in our grandkids' school recently took his life. And it's like it just seems like the stories are endless these days. Please do not be one of those stories. God says your life matters. I've heard it said before that statistics are people with the tears wiped away. Statistics are people with the tears wiped away. So I can sit here and cite stats, but yet at the end of the day, this is a person. Every one of these is a person, right? And we care. I care. We all care about each other. I know we want more of that. And so here's what I want to say is suicide rates have increased, the CDC says, by 25% in the last 2 decades. So again, that's a more generalized statistic than just with youth or with kids. But if you are dealing with suicidal thoughts or have a plan to end your life, like I said, please tell someone, because healing starts with talking. And I want you to know you're more loved than you may ever know, especially by your Creator. The world would not be the same without you in it. No one can ever take your place. And you have a calling and you have a purpose. And I want to teach you something. I wrote this. I made this up, but it's just a 4-phrase little quip to just encourage you. And I want you to say it with me. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. Okay? Say it with me. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. That's the thing. I look back now at times that I was so low, a breakup, or I didn't get invited back to a ministry I'd done the summer before, and I felt so rejected and embarrassed, and on it goes. Or I got fired from a job, and I mean, lots of rejection by guys or different organizations. I've had lots of that. I mean, I didn't get invited to a ministry once because I weighed too much. Yes, I was 23 years old. I got rejected by a Christian ministry because I weighed too much. I mean, I could go on and on about times that I hit really low lows, but I'm so thankful now that I didn't give up, because later God has milked that. I've been able to use that to relate to so many people, those stories of where I hit a low low and came out, but I couldn't do it ever alone. So I'm sure you probably know this, but I'm just going to ask, do you know which person in the Bible dealt the most with depression and suicidality? It's Elijah. It is Elijah. Elijah had an enemy, the queen, Jezebel, and he feared for his life and he felt alone. Here's what 1 Kings 19:4-5 says. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and he prayed that he might die. Here's what the scripture says. I've had enough. That's what he said. I've had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he laid down and he slept under the broom tree. Obviously, he was praying that God would take his life, snuff him out, that he would die and not have to wake up. But then the scripture says, but as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. Do you notice in that verse that God himself sent an angel? There are guardian angels and ministering angels that do God's bidding. And in Psalm 139, it says, angels help us not dash our foot against a stone. They are there to lift us up, in addition to the presence of Jesus and Holy Spirit and Father God. And so know that a place to start is to get a good meal, as that angel of mercy is stepping in. Get up and eat. So sometimes when you're really depressed, you need some food. That will help kick up your serotonin and dopamine and adrenaline levels to get you moving. So I just wanted to put that in there. That a lot of times what you need, just like Elijah, is a good meal. And even if you don't feel like reaching out to a friend, text and go, Can we get a bite to eat? Can we go out together? Like a friend that you know is trusted, that you're not going to go get drunk, but you're going to get with a friend that actually isn't just a talker, but is a good listener. Okay? Let me segue now to say the impact of fathering when you're depressed, because that's what we're talking about here. How do you be an engaged dad? And when you're a disconnected dad or a depressed dad, you may feel less engaged. It's harder to listen or connect. Maybe you have a lot of self-talk. You've heard me say men would rather do nothing than do it wrong. Well, you may be saying, that's already, kind of my default. And then now on top of it, now I'm dealing with feeling even worse about the fact that I'm doing nothing. And then that takes you even lower. So there's an impact of fathering for sure. It may be that you're more easily angered and irritable. You can just tell you're short a lot. Again, that's a sign that there's probably something weighing you down and you would be wise to address it, or the depression won't lift. You have to address the thing that's pressing you down. And if you can't problem solve on your own and you've asked God for wisdom and nothing is moving, you've got to go to somebody else. I mean, you remember Moses was in a really heavy place, right? He couldn't do all that he was doing. So two friends, one of them was named Ben, one of them was named her, not H-E-R, not a girl, H-U-R. Two guys came on either side and lifted his arms up so that the battle could go forward. When his arms were up, they'd be winning. And so they held his arms up. You need battle buddies. You need others that can hold your arms up. And if you don't have anyone, call a counselor. I do lots of coaching with dads and moms, across the country. Reach out to me. Just go to my website, drmichellewatson.com, and you can send me a message and I'll meet with you. But don't believe you're alone. Don't believe that lie that you don't matter, that no one can ever understand you or come alongside you. Because really, we're called to bear each other's burdens, as Galatians 6:2 says. So another impact of fathering, less motivation or energy, like to even want to connect or want to take your daughter or son out and do things with them, more procrastination. You know you want to, but you just keep putting it off. And then maybe even harder to keep the conversation going like usual when you are with them. Maybe you're less communicative at all, all the way around. You're just harder to find the words. And I'm saying that's why I write books like Let's Talk, where you have the words right in front of you so that even if you're low, even if you don't feel very, motivated, you could still use the template there to read the scripts. And really sometimes you fake it till you make it. Like you're saying, okay, if I'm in a season where I just don't have the energy and I just am struggling to get out of bed, I'm going to ask God to give me the strength. I'm going to take my daughter out and I'm going to use the scripts there. So then you're not having to think as hard because it's right there in front of you. So you know what I wish I would have known when I was younger is that God never wastes pain. I didn't always know that when I was younger, but I do now. God never wastes pain. And he always keeps his promises to work all things together for good. So even if right now isn't good, there's no way to see this good because it isn't good. And that's the truth. But God will work all of it together for good. Like I always say when I'm baking, nobody eats baking soda or salt by itself. But when you work it into the dough, the cookies taste way better, right? With those things that might be a little sour to the taste, but they're part of the whole because they're worked in. So remember again, I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. Okay, we're getting ready to kind of land the plane, but what I want to talk now to you about is having a bit of a grid. So in some ways, this is your go step. It's kind of long. It's not one thing. A lot of times I say, here's one thing. But Dad, this is your action step. So now if you've said, yep, okay, Dr. Michelle has helped me see I am really depressed. I would say on a scale of 0 to 10, ask yourself if 10 is the most depressed I could be and 0 is the bottom, or you might want to flip that. I'm going to give you an option. You might say 10 is I feel really happy and up. 0 is I feel really depleted. You can do it either way. The first one is called subjective units of distress, SUDS, like how amped inside do I feel, how intense, and then you go up to 10. But if that isn't the grid you like, flip it. 10 can be if I feel elevated in my mood. 0 is I feel really low. And tell someone, I feel like I'm at a 2. What number are you picking me up at? Or maybe they would say, you seem really like an 8. And you're like, actually, I'm a 2 on the inside. So using sometimes a number scale can really be helpful. But now I want to talk about a way that you can have a grid of a proactive strategy of what to do if you're dealing with depression. And it's simply the word blah. Like if you feel blah, B-L-A-H, blah, blah, B-L-A-H, you're just flatlined, you don't have a lot of oomph, you're super depressed. Here are 4 ways that you can think to take an action step out of it. The first one, you may go, okay, Michelle, that is, you dug deep on that one, or you didn't dig deep enough to come up with something more creative, but I'm saying barf. B is for barf. What I mean by that is word vomit. Like get it out, get your words somehow out, whether it's writing it out, texting it out, put a voice memo to a friend, something that says, I don't want to see you right now, but I just want to give voice to what's going on inside. And you know what I'm going to say as part 2 of that is your daughter, your son want you to be okay. So if you're really struggling, oftentimes they may think it's them. My dad's biting my head off more. He doesn't talk to me as much. He's isolating more in his room. So most of the time they will think it's their fault. It's something about them. I would really encourage you on this barf one, word vomit, is to let them know, even if you write it in a note, I just want you to know I'm going through some things right now, and I promise you I'll get help. I'm figuring it out. I'm working on it, because you're modeling to them that it's okay to be depressed, but you've got to do something about it. You are modeling that to them, and that's health. So, okay, I know that one's really not the most pleasant word, but you got to just throw me a bone on that one, okay? So for the words, for the acrostic blah, B is barf. L, look. So as you know, if your car has a clunking sound, you've got to lift up the hood and look at the wiring. You've got to look at what is underneath it. So there usually is some kind of, like I said earlier, with a hand weighing down on a pillow, there's some reason the depression is there. And if you can't figure it out, because sometimes in that lower state, your brain isn't firing all that much because your midbrain, we call it, is flooding your prefrontal cortex where you can think and reason and put things together and sort it out. And so you're flooded, or we say that prefrontal cortex goes offline. So then your midbrain that's on fire may not be thinking as clearly. So that's again where, it even leads into A for ask. Ask someone else for feedback. Ask someone else for help. Say, what are you picking up in me that you notice? Is there any reason you can think I'm not okay? Because I don't know what's wrong with me. But remember, again, it's not what's wrong with you. It's usually what happened to you, as Dr. Bruce Perry says in his book, What Happened to You. So you want to learn to ask questions about what happened to take me down, not what is wrong with me, because that will get you further in figuring it out. And if you can't figure it out, ask a friend. Ask a friend, what are you picking up from what you've seen? When do you think this started? And you kind of together do what we call that in my field is behavior chain analysis. Like you look at a chain and go, let's go back link by link to where the chain has an opening. It broke and came unhinged, to kind of say, what was it that changed things? Does that make sense? So look means look inside, look under the hood at what is causing this and get help. That's the A, right? Ask for help. I think another A could be act. I think they go together. Ask and act. I mean, when Ken and I were talking about this, he said, men need tasks. He said, so if you're depressed, think of one task you could accomplish today. Even if it's as small as making the bed, do one thing. Then tomorrow, just do one other thing. Do one other thing. The next day, do one thing. A task. So that's why for the A, ask or act, or well, let's say both. Ask someone for help and support and act, because I think asking for help is an action, right? So ask for help. And if you can't say it, out loud, write it in a text, or like I said, in a voice memo, something like that. And then H is hold on. BLAH, hold on. It won't always be this hard, I promise. I've heard the acronym HOPE, like hold on to hope. Hold on, pain ends. I mean, let God as a father be a father to you. I love Galatians 4:6 that says, because you are sons, God sent the spirit of his son into our hearts, the spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. The way my friend Dr. David Eckman says it is that that's the Holy Spirit yelling, you've got a dad. Take your pain to your dad. So you're not an orphan. I'm not an orphan. You and I are a brother and a sister with the same Heavenly Father who calls us his own, who says our lives matter. And I love that the Holy Spirit is shouting, you've got a dad. Another way to know that you've got a Father in heaven who loves you, cares about you, is Hosea 11:3-4, where God says, it was I who taught Ephraim how to walk, taking them by the arms, but they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. To them, I was like one who lifts a little child to the cheek, and I bent down to feed them. So you have a Father in heaven who loves you, has your name written on the palm of his hand, and even if right now you look around and feel like you're not loved, you don't matter, I'm here to tell you that's a lie from the father of lies, and your life matters. And if you're depressed, ask for help, call a counselor, call your doctor, talk to a pastor, a mentor. You can write me as a mental health coach, a licensed professional counselor. I have a PhD in health psychology, and it is, now after almost 30 years, it's my honor and privilege to be invited into what I call holy ground, sacred places, in order to bring encouragement and alliance and teaching skills. And a lot of times it's just being with. So how has that been for you? Take a big breath. I know we've been sitting on the sidelines of the track. Drink some water. That was a lot to take in. You might need to listen to this more than once, but I trust that this conversation today, Dad, has been helpful, that you have felt my support to help bring this conversation into the forefront, to give you more awareness, and to provide you with some practical action steps. So just to review that, BLAH, in case that was the craziest, silliest thing you've ever heard in your whole life, let me just remind you again, action steps. Pick one of these. B, barf, which just means word vomit, get it out. L, look. A, ask and act. And H, hold on. Well, there you go. Today, our topic has been on your mark when you're a depressed dad. I would encourage you to say these words with me, that little quip I taught you earlier. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. Okay, now let's do it the oomphy way. I have a purpose. God has a plan. I may not get it now, but later I'll understand. And together by faith, we're going to believe that together. Well, I trust that this has been a helpful conversation to you, and this wraps up another week's program. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson-Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, signing off and encouraging you to make today a day where you intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's hearts. Go Dads.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson-Canfield. If you're looking for more resources to support the father-daughter relationship, or if you want to connect personally with Dr. Michelle, you can find all the information you need at drmichellewatson.com. That's drmichellewatson.com. And remember, you can listen to the Dad Whisperer podcast anytime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the next edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson-Canfield.